college football season has officially begun. It's episode 161 of The Next Best Bet. I'm Jake Higgins with Brett Levy, as always. Brett, the NFL preseason has been wrapping up on Sunday as we've been watching some teams fight, some players unfortunately get injured, and it's why fantasy football drafts should, in my opinion, be after preseason games are done with. But Brett, we also, as you and I are recording, there's a boxing match going on between Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley. We sent out a tweet beforehand. Do you like these celebrity boxing matches like this? Does it mean anything to you?
Well, those are two different questions, right? Like, does it mean anything to me? No, I don't care. Do I enjoy them? I think it's fun. People like talking about them. I'm a little concerned for the state of boxing that, we think the Paul brothers are, the biggest events in boxing right now. But, I think MMA's coming up. There's a few other fighting leagues as well outside of the UFC. There's the One Championship, which is obviously big in Asia, and then there's Bellator as well, Higgins. So there's so many fighting leagues or fighting championships rather. So it kind of dilutes the pool there a little bit.
Yeah, it is interesting to your point that the Paul brothers seem to be the biggest names in boxing right now, even though they're not, in my eyes, legitimate professional boxers. They didn't come through the traditional ways professional boxers come through.
Disney
However,
Channel's not the way most people come up.
Disney Channel and YouTube are not the way most people come up. However, they bring large purses. Fighters are getting paid some of their biggest prize money ever. So it's good for the sport. It's bad for the sport. We'll see how it goes. Make sure to tweet at us about that. Brett, looking at last episode, I see some red, a lot of red for me. I only won one episode, but I finally eclipsed you in our Levy Lock pick of the pod race, a half game lead.
It's all over. Just pack up the podcast and go home, Brett. It's done. There's no reason to come out anymore. Higgins, you have the belt. I don't know. I gotta come back strong this episode.
Yep, but don't worry, we still got plenty of time, and we got the NFL season coming up, which for you and I, those are our strongest seasons, the football season, so it'll be interesting to see. But Brett, also taking a look at where we sit 8 months into 2020, you and I on the season, our units are basically right at dead even. So coming through the long summers of baseball season, some basketball and hockey we had, Olympics and everything, we are entering into football season basically at dead even, and this is where the money's going to get made. I'm going to say it right now.
I love it, Higgins. End the year strong.
Let's jump into our Beginner's Boulevard, though, Brett, and we're going to talk about something called an added game. Now, added games appear on betting boards after main lists are posted. They're common in college football, and we're going to talk about some college football a little later because we're actually not going to have an episode before those weekend's games come out, but you'll see added games kind of come in and then get pulled and then come back in college football, especially early on in the week like this, Brett, where lines are still being figured out and handicapped. We're still finding out about injury reports and stuff like that. Maybe not so much for these week one games, but later on in the year.
Yeah, Higgins, well, you mentioned we're not having the weekend episode. That's because I'm moving this week, Higgins.
Ooh.
Finally moving to a state where I can bet 24/7 in New Jersey. So there we go, making some big moves. So hand up, that's on me. But I'll be all settled in New Jersey for week one of the NFL season.
You'll be all settled in New Jersey, and maybe that leaves some opportunity for some more bets to be given out, maybe some more content. We'll find out. Maybe we'll have a new set for Brett. We'll have to figure out what that new set's going to look like, too.
Definitely going to be in a new office. Yeah, for sure.
Let's jump into some baseball, Brett, because before we talk about college football, which is going to actually start on Wednesday, we have Monday's baseball, and I actually have a few picks in this game. I'm going to start with a lean, though. We got the Minnesota Twins traveling to face the Detroit Tigers in an AL Central matchup. This is mainly a matchup of pride between these two teams. Neither of them are really fighting for any type of playoff position or wild card push or anything like that. So it's all about pride. And you know who really has a lot of pride are these young rookie pitchers, guys like Casey Mize, which Casey Mize is going to be on the mound for the Detroit Tigers, facing off against Bailey Ober for the Minnesota Twins. At least that's the projected starting pitchers right now. And Casey Mize, he did face the Minnesota Twins once this year, and I find that beneficial because the Twins are 7-2 against the Tigers this year. However, one of the two games that the Tigers won against the Twins was with Casey Mize on the mound. Now, Mize did not record the win, but the Tigers did get the win. And with this game being in Detroit, with this being after the trade deadline, after we've seen Minnesota ship off a lot of their players and seen how they've kind of performed since, I like Detroit and I like Casey Mize in this scenario. So right now, I'm leaning money line Detroit plus 105, but I'm honestly, Brett, I'm going to wait until Monday when the lineups come out just to make sure because I want to verify that Casey Mize is on the mound for this game because that's my reasoning for this pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you have a few more baseball picks, Higgins, because trying to get the people excited for Twins Tigers on a Monday afternoon, that is a tough sell, my friend. But you know what? When there's money to be made, if you have an angle, Higgins, good for you. So I hope you cash. But let's talk about some of these teams that are like, actually fighting for something, not just like, hey, we have a month of the season left. Holy crap. How are we going to get through this thing?
So how about an NL matchup then between the Brewers and the Giants? Does that work? That sound
Yeah,
a little
that
more
might that
interesting?
might be a little more interesting. Yeah, maybe.
Well, especially because we got Corbin Burns on the mound facing off against Johnny Cueto. A little bit of two more well-known pitchers on the mound here. Corbin Burns potentially fighting for a Cy Young position in the NL. That race is still up for grabs. Johnny Cueto not necessarily in that same race. However, the Giants still leading the NL West, which is seemingly shocking everybody because if you ask who has the best team in baseball, everyone's going to say the Dodgers with that roster. It's honestly one of the best rosters I've seen in probably the past 20 years. But the Giants, they're still atop the NL West. They're doing what no one continues to believe they can do. And the Giants are the top team in the MLB against the run line. They have been like this for a while now. And even though the Brewers are the fourth best team against the run line in the MLB, I'm going to take that with a grain of salt when the Brewers are the favorites at -1.5 runs here. So we got Burns on the mound for the Brewers at -1.5 with plus 120. We got Cueto on the mound for the Giants plus 1.5 at -140. I'm taking the Giants at plus 1.5 -140. And Brett, I'm actually thinking of maybe pairing this as well in a parlay with my other run line pick that I'm doing.
Oh, okay, Higgins. Well, I guess I'll just play slight devil's advocate. Corbin Burns of the two pitchers has been the better pitcher. The Brewers probably as hot as any team in the National League over the last month. So, maybe you like maybe some people like the Brewers. The books clearly think the Brewers are the team to bet in this spot at -130. But Higgins, you love those plus money line. Excuse me. You love those plus 1.5 on the run line. You like the value in that extra half a run there, so the team can lose by one and you still win. And if you like those bets, I mean, this game is a great one to do it because the Giants just keep proving everyone wrong, as you've said. So, I mean, why not prove us wrong again on Monday night?
And the -140 juice, it was almost too much for me to take, except for when you look a little bit more into the run line performance of these two teams so far this year. When you look at when the Giants have been underdogs on the run line this year, they're 41-9. 41-9 at plus 1.5 odds, -140. Yeah, that's some steep juice, but I'm still going to take it. And I'm honestly, like I said, I'm looking at pairing it potentially in a parlay with this other run line that I'm doing between the Houston Astros and the Seattle Mariners. The Mariners, they have fallen down to number 5 in the MLB against the run line, but they're still performing fantastically. Meanwhile, Houston is doing okay. They're just over 500 at 66 and 64 on the year. But the Mariners, they are really scratching and clawing to keep themselves not only in this AL West, but to try to find an AL wild card. We've talked about in previous series between these two teams around the trade deadline, actually, how important it is for the Mariners to get wins against the Astros and not let that gap grow in the standings. They got Chris Flexen on the mound for the Mariners. He's facing off against Luis Garcia, so not necessarily the strongest arm on the mound for Houston either. I really like this matchup, especially with Seattle at plus 1.5 at minus 125. And if I were to pair those together, like I've been saying, if I paired Seattle Mariners with the San Francisco Giants, both of those plus 1.5 run lines, it would be about a plus 215 parlay, which I'm thinking about, but I haven't pulled the trigger on yet.
Yeah, I don't, this one's interesting because the Mariners kind of feel like they're fading here a little bit, Higgins. It
Hmm.
kind of does feel like the Astros and the A's are pulling away a little bit in the AL West, especially with how well the Yankees have played in the AL East. It's just really diminished their hopes of that second wild card spot. But you're right. If Seattle has any chance of staying competitive this last month of the season, it starts on Monday, Higgins, August 30th against the division rival. So, huge game. You might as well take the dog fighting for their season. And, if they don't come out hungry, well, you can be done betting that dog for the rest of the year.
Absolutely. And Seattle did win their last game against Houston in a recent series that was back on August 22nd. Or, sorry, excuse me, August 24th. No, sorry, yeah, I was right. August 22nd was when they played Houston. They went on and played against Oakland and they won that one as well. So I got the dates confused a little bit. Yeah, August 22nd, the Seattle Mariners did get a win in that last game against Houston, so who knows? Maybe they can continue on. And if they can get a win or two against Houston in this series, they may have an interesting September ahead of them.
Yeah, I think that's the hope is Seattle would like to be competitive in the last month of the season. They'd like to have a realistic shot, but if they come out flat on Monday, Higgins, probably hanging up my hat on the Mariners for the year. I'll be done with the Mariners.
I'd have to agree with that. Brett, jumping into some moneyline magic, though, we had some interesting opportunities in terms of a moneyline magic to pick because we could have gone with the Giants Patriots preseason game that had a Hail Mary at the end, although the Giants weren't able to quite complete a comeback, so it's not quite a money line magic. Um, there was the interesting Mets game where there was some interference calls. There's going to be an interesting back page of the New York Post on Monday, I'm sure, after what happened with the Mets fans and Javi Baez. But we're going to stay away from those team events. We're actually going to go with an individual event, Moneyline Magic, because the BMW Championship, Brett, it was a golf match that just allowed these pros to really show how good they are at golf. Because, I mean, Bryson DeChambeau had an opportunity at 59 on Friday. There were multiple golfers that were more than 20 under on the tournament between 4 rounds of golf. And so Patrick Cantlay and Bryson DeChambeau heading into Sunday, they were tied, and they both shoot a 66 to force a playoff after Cantlay made an 18-footer to force the playoff.
Yeah, no, it's a huge putt down the stretch there, Higgins. You mentioned DeChambeau had a shot at 59. going into the weekend. Yeah, this was the first time I believe they've played PGA Tour events at this course. And boy, did guys go low, Higgins. I mean, this is like the anti US Open. Like US Open, we're playing like par golf, one under, right? This
Not
is
a
like,
single
let's
guy in
go.
competition was over par. Phil Mickelson finished at the bottom and he was one under.
Yeah, imagine missing the cut one under. Oh man, that's awful.
Well, there wasn't a cut. There was everyone played 4 rounds, but one under was the lowest scored. It was Phil Mickelson and 3 others that scored one under. But that just shows the opportunity that there was. And honestly, as they went into the playoff, it took quite a few holes for them to go. They went switching back and forth between hole 18, hole 17, and 4 consecutive pars by both Patrick Cantlay and Bryson DeChambeau had this go back to hole 17. Both of them then birdie that par 3, and it goes back to hole 18. Patrick Cantlay makes the birdie putt to finally win this, and Bryson DeChambeau misses a 10-footer that would have extended it to another playoff hole, but unfortunately he missed it. But honestly, Brett, you could say DeChambeau had a couple opportunities to potentially win this because he missed a 6-footer and 4 other birdies on the weekend. The 6-footer that he missed was his opportunity for a 59 on Friday. And I only bring that up because it kind of brings true the essence of moneyline magic that in golf, a stroke that you missed on Friday could potentially ultimately have been part of what forces a playoff on Sunday, and then you lose the playoff on Sunday. If I'm Bryson DeChambeau, this is why I'm not a pro. I would dwell on that. I'd be kicking myself on Friday for not making that 59.
Yeah, well, you definitely have to move on to the next shot, and you can't focus on what's in the past. You have to move forward. But yeah, you raise a good point, Higgins. If he was a little more locked in on some of these other birdie putts or on that last putt on Friday, that could have been the difference in this tournament.
All of this as we creep closer and closer to the Ryder Cup as well, which will be very interesting. Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka are playing on the same team. Steve Stricker, the captain, had to ask them to put their feud aside for the betterment of the country, and they said, okay, we'll see if that actually happens, though. If we get Bryson and Brooks playing in the same group on the same team, to me, that's going to be must-watch television.
Yeah, I doubt they'll be in the same group. That seems a bit far stretch. But yeah, it'll probably be cordial for the week. I'm sure they'll find a way to do it.
It'll be very interesting, absolutely. Well, before we jump into the football, though, Brett, today's episode is brought to you by DB. DB is a Scandinavian brand that makes backpacks and bags that help people on the move stay ready for anything. From the streets to the peaks, DB's gear is travel tested by some of the world's best athletes, adventurers, and creators. Over the past decade, DB has designed and developed, released, and refined the best bags in the market. With DB's patented hookup system, you are able to attach smaller products to your backpack, roller, or tote. I can't stress enough how important it is to find the right luggage for every travel scenario. We are teaming up with DB to exclusively offer our listeners 10% off our next purchase by using the code POD10 or going to the link in our show description. DB, it's time to move on, time to get going. Now, Brett, we're jumping into some college football. Games start on Wednesday, technically, but they actually really started on Saturday because we had some week 0 games going on, and we actually had a bad beat in the very first game of the season. The over-under closed at 52.5 in that Huskers versus the Fighting Illini game. The Huskers kicker misses 2 extra points in that game, and 52 total points are scored. It's Heartbreak City in game 1 of college football season. I mean, welcome back.
Welcome back. Well, anyone that's betting an over in a Big Ten football game, like, just Must have been their first Big Ten football game, I guess, Higgins.
I had over 53 and a half, and it's just because I didn't have confidence in the defenses, to be honest, and it was close.
It was
It was it was
it was
close.
right there. It was about
Yeah,
about an extra
sharp
point
line.
away, probably.
Sharp line, sharp line. But let's jump into our games that are going on this week because it still is week one technically. Those games were also week one if you take a look at the schedule, Brett. And on Wednesday, we have a game between UAB and Jacksonville State, Brett. And typically, we'd probably be just jumping over this game, but I actually want to talk about it. I actually want to talk about this game because if you take a look at UAB, they're the favorites in the Conference USA potentially. Depending on who you ask, definitely out of the Conference USA West division, they're going to be the favorites. This is a team that each of the past 3 seasons has demonstrably extended and improved their defense. They have one of the best red zone defenses. Their success rate as a defense was one of the top in the nation last year. And then their offense is where the questions are, unfortunately. I mean, their quarterback, he had missed 4 games last year. He's losing a couple of his receivers and his running backs. However, when you look at who UAB is facing, they're facing Jacksonville State, a team that didn't just play last fall. They only played half a season last fall. They played 4 games last fall. They played 9 games in the spring. This is a team that did not have an offseason. They did not get to prep their incoming freshmen properly. They did not get to have their guys gain their typical 15 to 20 pounds in the offseason like they standard do, as their coach was saying in a preview article that I was reading. So honestly, I am not expecting this Jacksonville State team to come out ready because they have not been able to fully heal, fully repair, fully prepare, and grow from last season into this season. It hasn't been a full offseason for them, so I'm expecting struggles early on for Jacksonville State. That's why you look at UAB at minus 14 and a half. There's questions on that offense, which has me a little bit hesitant, but the UAB defense has me thinking Jacksonville State is going to have a very big issue on offense, and UAB is going to be able to cover that minus 14 and a half, no problem.
All right, Higgins. Well, I'll just take your word for it on that one because I probably will not be tuning into UAB Jacksonville State on Wednesday. You found a college football game, Higgins. I probably am just gonna say, you know what? There's too many good ones on Thursday. I'm excited for. I gotta hold off and fight for my TV rights on Thursday because in the ACC, Higgins, Sam Howell and North Carolina take on Virginia Tech, and I'm going under 64 and a half. Virginia Tech will have a new starting quarterback this year as their quarterback last year. I believe his name was Hayden Hooker or Hilden Hooker. He transferred to Tennessee. Looks like he's going to actually be sitting behind Joe Mixon. Not maybe not Joe
Joe
Milton.
Mixon's the running back for Cincinnati.
Joe
For the
Milton.
Bengals in the
Excuse
NFL.
me,
Not
Joe
Cincinnati.
Milton. It was a not my
No
best,
worries.
a little twist of tongue there. But Joe Milton, the former Michigan quarterback, is probably going to be starting at Tennessee over the former Virginia Tech quarterback. So, new quarterback at Vatech. I think these defenses are both pretty strong this year in North Carolina and Virginia Tech. Offensive weapons on North Carolina, a lot of them went to the NFL last year between Daz Newsome, Dynemi Brown, Michael Carter, Javante Williams. So, whole new looking North Carolina offense. I don't think a matchup like this in week one really lets the offenses get cooking, Higgins. So I'm looking for a strong defensive game here, under 64 and a half in Blacksburg.
Yeah, that's a pretty tall over-under, I would say, especially for all the question marks on offense that you just mentioned. I like that play. I really do. I have a different game on Thursday that my attention's going to be cast at, Brett, and it's another mid-major game. That's what I'm starting off with early. I think there's some good value here. And we take a look over at the American Athletic Conference, the AAC. We got Appalachian State hosting Eastern Carolina. Appalachian State's in the Sun Belt. Eastern Carolina's in the AAC. Eastern Carolina's not expected to really be competing for their conference or their division. Appalachian State is. And so Appalachian State starting off strong, 10 minus 10.5. I really like that, especially when you take a look at this team bringing back nine of their defensemen, 10 if you include one of their corners that had to sit out all of 2020 due to injury. This is a defense that I expect to be strong. There's an offense that I expect to be able to counter well off of that defense and take advantage. Minus 10.5, not too big for me. I like that a lot more than the other one that I just gave, the UAB pick, just because it's under the 14 points. UAB, if you find that line under 14 or at 14 exactly, absolutely take that. That hook is the only thing that scares me about my UAB pick, but minus 10.5 for App State, I love that line.
Fair enough. Well, Higgins, I'm betting on a North Carolina game, so it's only fair I bet on a Duke game. Duke takes on Charlotte. Higgins, Duke loses Chase Bryce, who goes to App State, actually, ironically, to start there. But I think Duke, the ACC school, playing in Charlotte, will want to show that they are the dominant big brother in this matchup. I think the 6.5 is pretty low number. And I think Duke comes in prepared. It'll be interesting to see who Duke starts at quarterback, though. They have quite a few quarterbacks on the roster, Higgins. I'm not 100% sure I have my finger on the pulse on this one.
Yeah, there's 6 quarterbacks on their roster. I mean, if I had to guess, I mean, there's senior Gunnar Holmberg, but that's literally a guess. It could be one of the other 2 juniors as well, like Jack Collier or Gavin Spurrier. There's a quarterback situation in Durham, I would say.
I think that's fair for sure, Higgins. My last game on Friday, though, that I will be on, Big Ten battle between Michigan State and Northwestern. I told everyone that would listen about the Northwestern Wildcats last year. Called them the best team in the Big Ten. There were some other pretty good teams in the Big Ten, most notably Ohio State. Northwestern got stomped on by Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. But I'll still say this, Northwestern 2 first-round picks last year in the NFL draft, Higgins. They're looking to build on that. 3.5-point favorites in the season opener, the home opener for Northwestern. Michigan State down program right now. I'm going to be fading Michigan State all year against good teams in the Big Ten. So let's start it off with Northwestern on Friday.
Okay, I like that, and you're not lying. You told anybody that would listen last year about Northwestern. You talked specifically a lot about their defense last year. Is that what you're high on for them again this year?
Yeah, I think Northwestern's defense. Again, Peyton Ramsey back, so you hope he's going to play well. But Northwestern's defense is what carries them. Pat Fitzgerald, obviously, former star linebacker at Northwestern, so he takes a lot of pride in that defense, Higgins.
Yes, he does. I'm also going to be jumping into the Big Ten, Brett, and this is actually a pick that I made that I thought was a game on Friday because that's what the sports book said actually when I was writing down the odds for our rundown. But it turns out Penn State and Wisconsin, they're playing on Saturday. The sports book was lying to me. And I have some cautious optimism for this Penn State team. I typically find myself feeling some cautious optimism for a Penn State team whenever they find themselves with a senior quarterback that's had a year or 2 under their belt, like Sean Clifford does with Penn State this year. Meanwhile, Wisconsin, they had high hopes last year, but they had some COVID bugs. They had some other issues that kind of jumped up for them. And so Penn State traveling to Wisconsin, I'm going to be backing Penn State on the money line. It's just under plus 200 on the money line right now. And I like that value because I do expect this to be a close game, Brett. The line is at 5.5 points in favor of the Wisconsin Badgers right now. I don't know if it should be over a 3-point spread personally, but I'm going to be staying away from the spread because I do actually like the Nittany Lions to win outright. So I'm going to be taking them here. I think this is going to be a game that says a lot about both of these teams, though, for this year. They're starting off with a big Big Ten test just to start off their season. This game has implications for conference standings, conference championship games at the end of the year in their very first game. It's very interesting to see them playing this early.
Yeah, I mean, lots of great games in the Big Ten. I'm excited for Minnesota, Ohio State as well, Higgins. So
Mm-hmm.
lots of good football coming up
Yes,
this weekend in the Big Ten.
yes, there really is. And there's plenty of other great games on Saturday that we could talk about, Brett. But then we give ourselves no social media content to be able to start teasing out over this next week because, like you said, you're in the process of moving, so we will not be recording our typical Thursday episode this week. Typically, we record on Wednesday nights, but Brett, you got a lot of things going back and forth from New York City to New Jersey. I don't want to add a little bit of extra mileage onto your mind right now by having to think of another podcast episode, too.
No, yeah, it's a tough week, but we'll get back into our normal recording schedule for sure.
Absolutely. So make sure to follow us on our social media for those college football picks. That's at NBB Pod on Twitter, at Next Best Bet on Instagram, and the Next Best Bet Facebook page and YouTube channel. Brett, before we get out of here, though, the Levy Lock pick of the pod. I took a half game lead on you, in the last episode, and I'm going to jump back into my baseball picks. We were talking about Corbin Burns versus Johnny Cueto in the Brewers versus Giants game. And I really like what I've seen from the Giants this year on the run line. Whenever they're underdogs, they're 41-9 on the season this year. They're plus 1.5 at minus 140 odds in this game. So I'm going to be taking the San Francisco Giants at plus 1.5 in this one. That is my pick of the pod.
All right, Higgins. Well, I'm going to the Big Ten because the Northwestern Wildcats are taking on Michigan State. I just don't buy into Michigan State. I don't think they're very good right now. I think Northwestern probably at the high for their program, like maybe all time right now. So, Northwestern minus 3.5, home opener, season opener. They're gonna be fired up. It's tough to play in Evanston sometimes, Higgins. It's just not the same as going to a Michigan or an Ohio State. It's a little bit quieter in Evanston.
It's a new college football season, but once again, Brett is preaching to follow the Northwestern Wildcats. He's jumping on that train early this year. And Brett, this is actually our third football season with the Next Best Bet because this podcast started in November of 2019, so we caught the tail end of that season. Then we had all of last year. What are you looking forward to as we jump into our third?
Yeah, I'm just excited to make some money, Higgins. Hopefully the Jets, might win 6 games this year. That would be nice. Maybe the Giants win 6 games for you, Higgins. That would be nice, huh? So, yeah, hopefully we win some bets. Our teams win some games. Maybe we win some fantasy leagues, Higgins. Just positivity.
Positivity. Hey, if Northwestern goes undefeated, can we see Brett dye his hair purple?
Oh, absolutely. I'll be Rose Bowl, all of it, Higgins.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds great. Let us know your picks for the college football not the playoffs, college football season coming up. We got plenty of games. We could have talked about plenty more, not even just for Saturday's games. There's plenty of other games on Thursday and Friday going on as well. Let us know on social media at NBB Pod on Twitter, at Next Best Bet on Instagram, and the Next Best Bet Facebook page and YouTube channel. This has been episode 161 of the Next Best Bet. For Brett, I'm Jake. We'll talk to you again after next weekend. Brett, happy packing, happy moving.